Welcome to the Denver Gazette Sports Podcast. I am your host, Chris Schmaedeke, and today we are brought to you by Applewood Plumbing, Heating, and Electric. They have been serving Denver residents for 50 years. They are the proud sponsor of the Colorado Avalanche and of this podcast, where I'm going to break down the Denver Nuggets with Vinny Benedetto. Vinny, how are you today?
Doing well, doing well. Still tired of these 8 p.m. national television games and what they do to our deadlines, but I'm doing well.
Yeah, that seems to be what we talk about every time. We always come off of those late games, and 8 o'clock was what was last night's tip? Like 8:12, 8:15, something like that.
Yeah, something around there.
Yeah. So Nuggets finally lose to the Clippers for the first time in a long time, 111 to 102. I always want to say since the bubble, but I know the Clippers have beat them since then. But last night's game was Nikola Jokic's worst shooting game of his career?
I think percentage-wise, yeah.
So it was just a very strange game. Nuggets came out early and kind of looked like they were going to run away with it. Second quarter, bench comes in, and we'll talk more about the bench. But just a very strange. They led going to the fourth quarter, and then things kind of fell apart in the fourth when Nikola Jokic couldn't make a shot.
Yeah, it was a tough watch for Nuggets fans because it was. I think there was an 0 for 9 shooting stretch from Nikola in the second quarter, and then again in the fourth, he just couldn't buy a bucket. And you don't complain much about 20-point triple doubles, but that was a rare night where I feel like Nuggets fans can say Nikola Jokic let him down a little bit last night.
Well, and they were like easy shots. Like he wasn't, Sombor shuffling all over the place. Like he was like, those are real easy shots. Murray on the pick and roll, and he just switches that shot every time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the process for the most part was all right. I think there was maybe a three or two that I could have lived without from Jokic, but for the most part, he was getting good looks, and they just weren't falling. So I think most fans can chalk this one up as kind of an anomaly. I don't think there's too much real concern, but that is a team that I know Nuggets fans like to beat, and it would have been fun for them for sure to have that stretch, that streak stretch to what that would have been 12 in a row.
Something.
11,
I don't
12,
know.
13 in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I joked, it hasn't been since the bubble, but it's felt like that.
It does. It does feel like that.
Yeah. It ever felt since, Millsap wanted to fight whatever Morris brother that was. Marcus, I think. Yeah. But, I think there's a bigger picture with this is, they've played 13 games on the road this year and they're 5-8, and they have not looked good on the road. Would they go last year? 20 and 22 on the road? Is that right?
That feels right, and that was one of their big emphasis is coming into the season was being a better road team, and they're not off to a very good start in that regard.
So what is it on the road? Because they still come out and they look like they can blow teams out in the first quarter, and everything kind of just slows down.
Yeah, and I've looked at the home road splits, and nothing really like jumps off the page at you. Like maybe turnovers are a bit up and assists are a bit down. It feels like all of those feels like a good chunk of their 35 assist games or whatever they've had this year. Most of those, it feels like, have come at home. And I'm not sure if that's just a shooting discrepancy because it feels like for the most part they're playing the same way most times. I think the easy way out is just well how many of those losses came without Jamal Murray on the road, and it feels like a good chunk of those have been otherwise winnable games without Jamal Murray, but it's been a struggle.
And no hot take here. The Nuggets are better when Jamal Murray plays.
Yeah.
And he came back last night and played pretty well. He was 10 for 18, 23 points, hit some real classic Jamal Murray shots. But it just wasn't enough. And it was really strange how, I think I want to ask you, okay, I'm going to ask you about Michael Porter Jr. because he was, what did he go, 4 for 5 in the first quarter? And then he only had 8 shots in the whole game. So he's kind of disappearing in the second half a little bit.
And this has, I think, been a trend this season where it's MPJ's off to a hot start, and I think he had 10 or 11 points in the first quarter last night, and last night he ends up with 18. But it feels like there are plenty of nights where he's in double digits in the first quarter, and he adds 2 or 4 or 5 points the rest of the way. And I think part of that is the Nuggets offense is just so free flowing that they're not running a ton of set plays outside of immediately following timeouts. And I don't know if that's Nicola needs to look for Mike more or get him involved more, or if Michael Malone needs to call a couple more plays for Michael Porter Jr. Because when you've got a guy who's 7 of 8 and hitting the kind of shots that MPJ was hitting last night, feels like he's a guy that needs a few more looks on a night where, Nicola takes 32 shots and makes 9 of them.
I know I have the box score in front of me, and seeing him like the 32 next to field goals for Jokic just seems like it's not even real.
And we've seen that a few times this year. Like I think Houston did a really good job, but those were the games without Jamal, where I think Houston was just like, we're playing you straight up with Şengün, take 35 shots. We're going to try and limit the assists and prevent the other guys from hitting threes. But yeah, I think that feels like the first time this year where they've had a full starting 5 and Nicola's been that kind of high shot total guy.
And, I don't want to say the schedule is an excuse, but the schedule has not been kind to Denver to start this year.
No, and I feel like this week might finally be the end to it because they're here Friday night and then they hit the road again. I think from Monday, Tuesday, back to back. But it is one of those deals like it's tough. You've got the tough part of your schedule early in the season, but they should be able. The second half of the season should be pretty home heavy, and I'm not sure how they've already had a couple like 5 games and 7 night stretches.
Yeah.
Like there can't be too many more of those or too many back-to-backs left. So, the schedule has been tough and like that Sacramento loss on Saturday, I think was like the definition of a schedule loss. You play in Phoenix Friday night, then you get up to Sacramento, where they like to push the tempo and, have a great home crowd. So yeah, the schedule hasn't done many favors but they've left some wins on the table as well.
Well, that Sacramento game was strange because didn't they not hit a 3 till like the third quarter or something like that?
Yeah, that 0 for 9 in the first half. Yeah, it was
but again, that was a game without Jamal Murray. So I mean, there is that as well. Okay, let's flip to the bench because it's always the hot topic. I think maybe the bench is going to get figured out more now that Jamal Murray's back. Do you think that's probably part of the process with all this?
Yeah, I think it's an adjustment because like up until last night, the last few games, Christian Braun has been like they're trying to turn him into Bruce Brown. They've like ran him a little as a point and had him play off of Joker or run some pick and roll stuff with DeAndre Jordan. But yeah, I think the bench will be in flux until they kind of commit to a plan at backup center. This has been something. This is a yearly talking point. Is Zeke Naji going to be able to do it? Early returns this year.
No.
Indicate no. Is DeAndre Jordan a guy you can count on every night? I don't know if the answer is yes either. So yeah, one thing I've been kind of playing with in my mind is if Vlatko Cancar is really out for the year, they could file for a DPE, I think, which would open up a roster spot. So I think that's one thing that's got to be on the front office and coaching staff's radar is getting a good look and figuring out if Vlatko's a guy they can count on at all this year. Otherwise, I would be looking at free agent centers or, thinking about guys who could potentially be buyout candidates later this year.
Did Vlatko hurt himself, during Euro? Is that what
it was in the lead up to Euro? So I think it was either late July or early August. So like it would have to be a pretty speedy recovery.
Quick recovery, yeah.
For him to, and then, best case scenario, you're trying to reintegrate a guy, during the playoffs. That just doesn't feel like
doesn't seem like a good plan. No, I don't think.
No,
especially with the defending champs. Yeah, I don't know if that's a great plan.
Yeah.
So something I noticed, and they talked about it on the broadcast. I know some of the road games you watch on the broadcast, like it seems like some of those guys off the bench are a little hesitant to shoot.
Yeah, well, Reggie's not.
No, okay, I was gonna say not Reggie Jackson. No,
but I think that's a good thing for the benches to have a guy like Reggie who, I think the combination of veterans with Reggie and DeAndre, and then the kids and Peyton Christian and Julian to this point. Julian's another guy who's not shy.
Yeah.
But I think that blend of youth and veteran is probably going to be the best bet for this bench because you've got, I think Reggie and DeAndre can still run pick and roll. We saw not last night as much, but the previous game against the Clippers when they were in the starting lineup, that pick and roll set is something they can still still go to on a pretty regular basis and get a decent shot more times than not. And then you've got the young guys whose job it is to turn up the pressure defensively, see if they can get out in transition and get some easy ones that way. So I think that blend of youth and experience is going to be the bench's best bet going forward. But that question at backup center still looms rather large.
And it's really tough to not have Peyton Watson on the floor. His defense is just incredible.
He's on a heater defensively from the KD
Durant and George in 2 nights.
Yeah. KD, De'Aaron Fox, and then last night it was Paul George got the experience. I think James Harden had Peyton Watson on him a few times, but yeah, he's feels like he's responded pretty well to being removed from the rotation that I think it was just once, and then fighting through an illness, a week or two ago. Feels like since he's kind of put those things behind him, he's been great defensively these last few games. And yeah, he's a guy I think I think the hierarchy on the bench right now is Christian, Reggie 1, 2, and Peyton I think has got to be the third guy.
Well, so they won the title with what, 8 guys in the playoffs last year, pretty much? Yeah, because Jeff, Bruce Brown, and Christian Brown came off the bench. That's pretty much it. Yep. You look at it now, it's Reggie, it's Christian, and then it's probably either Watson or if you have to play Jordan minutes. But I guess when we get to the playoffs, Aaron Gordon can slide the 5.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safe bet.
Yeah. All right, so we're just about a quarter of a way through the season. Nuggets are 14-8. I wanted to ask, is this kind of what you expected from the first quarter of the season? I say yes. I think they didn't start as slow as I thought they would, but I knew that there was going to be times like this.
Yeah, I think in the end, like 14-8 is about where I would have had it. I would have had it happening much differently because they were like 8-1 at one point. So yeah, I'm with you. I would have, banked on a little bit slower start to the season. But this again, Jamal Murray's missed 13 of the 22 games. So I think it's hard to have any grand conclusions as to where this team is at right now. But, all things considered, I think 14-8 is, you can live with that.
Yeah. And they were 14-8 last year too, I think.
That's another trend because, they were 10-6 earlier this year. Yeah. I think after that tough 5-game road trip and then Malone comes home and reminds us all they were 10-6 last year, and that turned out all right. So there is some parallels going on.
I feel like they were 14-8 when Murray hit the game winner in Portland that they always talk about. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I've read that or heard that, or maybe I've heard Malone in my dreams reminding all of us about, hey, everything's fine.
That feels right because I remember it was a December game, so
yeah, and then the first of the year is when they really went on their heater. So yeah. It's could be coming, and like you said, if they're home heavy, they haven't lost at home yet. They could really jump up. Let's talk a little just general NBA stuff. In-season tournament semifinals tonight. Who you got?
I got the Lakers. And
winning it all just because?
Yeah. Just LeBron James being the MVP of the first in-season tournament just makes too much sense to me right now.
Do we get LeBron Giannis in the final just to make things look better?
That feels right. That feels... I know there was a lot of talk about the NBA being upset, the potential of having like 4 small market teams in there.
Yeah.
No, but I think LeBron Giannis showdown in the first in-season tournament final sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm sure the NBA wouldn't hate that. I enjoy watching Tyrese Halliburton, but I don't know if the national audience does.
Yeah, no, he's been incredible this year, and like the Pacers are super fun to watch. He's don't play any defense.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce Brown can get a title last year and an NBA Cup this year. There we go.
Who would have thought leaving Denver for Indianapolis would have been the fast route to a title?
And I have to ask you about Minnesota. I don't understand how they're not in the in-season tournament. They've only lost 4 games. They must have lost all their games in group play. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Chris Finch and the Timberwolves are not in-season tournament fans, and they just threw those rested guys during the in-season tournament because they look incredible. Like the Rudy Gobert thing seems to finally have like been figured out how it all is going to work. Anthony Edwards is ascending. They got, I think the guys they missed in the playoffs last year, McDaniels, Naz Reid, I think are both really good players that have elevated them even more. So yeah, I think Minnesota's for real.
And they are probably the one, I mean, not the one team, but one of the few teams that can frustrate the Nuggets.
Yeah, it's a good matchup for Minnesota.
And I mean, they're probably right that they gave them the best series last year.
Yeah, I can't remember who floated this, but someone
I think it was Bruce Brown, I think, who said it.
he said it on the podcast, but then someone else was like, the difficulty of the playoffs was like inversely related to like the run, where it's like Minnesota toughest, Phoenix second toughest,
Oh, yeah.
Lakers third toughest, and then like the Heat ended up, the finals in a way ended up being the easiest series, which is, I think there's something to that, but it's weird to think about. So yeah, Minnesota, I think, is a team that the Nuggets would like to end up on the opposite side of the bracket from when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and Oklahoma City's up there, but I don't think the Nuggets have any trouble with Oklahoma City. They don't have anyone to guard Nicole. Chet can't guard Jokic yet.
Yeah, there's not enough time for a young Chet to put on the 30 pounds of muscle to even give him a shot.
So like you said, they go back to back on Monday, Tuesday at Atlanta and at Chicago. I mean, a split is fine, but it's almost like two. I mean, Atlanta's not playing great. Chicago's a hot mess this year. Those are probably two games you got to grab before you come home for three.
Yeah, especially Chicago. Like Atlanta, I think has been tough for them in the past. Just they'll spam that pick and roll, and I'm not saying put Nikola Jokic in the pick and roll is as sound of a strategy as it once was, but
right.
Trae Young is a pretty high level operator, and who knows, he's a guy that can get to the free throw line 10, 15 times in a game. So on the wrong night, I think the Hawks could give the Nuggets trouble, especially on the road. But Chicago at this point, and to your point, with them being kind of a mess, that feels like one you've just got to win.
Before we go, I want to ask you about the free throw stuff, because I've heard a lot of Nuggets complaining about not the Nuggets in general, but fans and people. They don't get to. They're not getting to the. I mean, I don't know what it was last night exactly, but I know that the Clippers got to the line a lot, which with the guys they have, it makes sense. But Jokic was getting beat up pretty good in that game last night.
Yeah, last night it was 25-9, and
Okay.
Jokic took Denver starters took 3 free throws. Jokic got 2, and Jamal took the other one. And yeah, I'm typically more of the lack of the thinking. My thinking is the lack of free throws more times than not is more related to the Nuggets get the ball inside, but it's a lot of get it inside to kick it out, or like Nikola is so good at those, like the bumping happens before the shot most times.
Yeah.
Like he's so good at like absorbing a bump and then fading away, and his touch is so good around the rim that he just makes so many shots like that. But to look at 32 shot attempts and 2 free throws for a guy who spends most of his time in the paint or not, I mean, a good deal of time in the paint, and is, 2-time MVP, finals MVP, that's a tough sell, especially when, James Harden on the other end is doing what he does to get to the free throw line and is rewarded for it. So I think that's a tough one. I think if it hasn't happened already, I'm guessing the league will be receiving some video footage from the Nuggets, wondering why some of the physicality isn't being called. But I think if you're the Nuggets, I think you got to concern yourself with making more free throws. They're not good at getting to the line. They're also not good at making it count when they are there. They went 8 for 9 last night, but I don't know how concerning it is, but I think conversations will be had with the NBA at some point about just getting Nikola a little bit better whistle.
Well, and on that last big road trip when they were at Detroit, I mean, Jokic and Malone got thrown out because of stuff like that. So, I mean, I feel like it's been seething for a while with them.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing with the Murray absence is Nikola is taking a lot more responsibility, not only just running the team on the court, but being the vocal guy, being the leader. So I think that stretch was pretty stressful for him in multiple ways, and yeah, that frustration certainly boiled over in Detroit.
They but they seem pretty healthy right now after that little bit of a break.
Yeah, I think yeah, it was nice to get Sunday, Monday off. I asked KCP about that on Tuesday, and he was like, "What break or what days off?" Because it sounds like most of the guys were in the gym Monday, and then they practice. Sounds like Tuesday. But yeah, all things considered, Jamal has said, the hamstring is fully behind him. The ankle thing was legitimately just an ankle that kept him out for a couple days. So, if both of those minor injuries are in the past, sitting at 14-8, playing a chunk of your season without Jamal Murray, I think they're in a pretty decent spot.
I will say when he did roll his ankle, that was a little bit of a big sigh, I think, because he just kind of bent over and was
Yeah.
like, I was like, oh man, what does, because he had a hamstring injury. You know how they can overcompensate, and the guy's already got a completely rebuilt knee, and
Yep.
it's like, oh my goodness, that could be bad, but it was just an ankle. All right, Vinny, thanks for coming on and talking. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on Apple and Spotify. Make sure you check out all of Vinny's coverage of the Nuggets at denvergazette.com, as well as all the other teams from everybody else. And Vinny, we will catch up again after maybe when the Nuggets will actually play at home again.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks.